Hello and welcome to this video tutorial from TrainSignal. The following clip is from TrainSignal's Cisco CCNA security training package, featuring over 13 hours of CCNA security training.
And here we are at the home window of SDM. I'm certainly familiar with this by now. And to configure a firewall, we're going to click the Configure Task button, which you knew. And Firewall and ACL task button is waiting for us right there. So we've got quite a bit we can do here. We'll look at the Create Firewall options here in a moment, and when we're done, we'll take a quick look in this window as well. This is where we edit the firewall policy and ACLs. And you can see we've got to watch our arrows here. We've got originating traffic and returning traffic. And an application security window as well. We don't have a policy on the router, so obviously it's going to be kind of hard to edit one, but I wanted to show you that tab. Also, don't forget when you go into SDM, you've usually got a very handy how do I section right down here. It's not something you'll be able to use during your exam, but you can also see great questions here. How do I create an access rule for a Java list? How do I permit traffic with my EasyVPN concentrator? How do I modify an existing firewall to permit traffic from a new network? How do I permit specific traffic through a DMZ interface? Some great advanced material there. It's good for your studies. You don't have to go into that to pass the CCNA security exam, but it's also a great place to get started when you're working with SDM in a production network. Let's take a look at the two differences here between the basic and advanced firewall. And you've noticed, if you've watched other videos already where we've used SDM, you'll notice that the use case scenario is going to change as you click from one button to another when you have choices here. In this one, there's a big difference because you see a DMZ appear, and also the numbers change right here. Watch those for just a moment when I go back to the basic firewall. Did you see the one value that changed? The basic firewall, as you can see, and you can read along with me here, use Basic Firewall Wizard to apply predefined rules to protect your private network from the most common attacks. Basic Firewall will not allow you to configure DMZ services. So that's a big difference right there. You'll notice there is no DMZ here, and it is a very basic configuration. Also notice that while the advanced firewall configuration does allow you to configure a DMZ, it also allows you to configure multiple outside interfaces. Notice when I go back to basic, it says one outside, not one through N. So we've got to be careful about that. And if we have multiple outside interfaces, even if we don't have a DMZ, you're going to have to use the advanced firewall. To allow us to look at the commands before we deliver them, I'm going to click Preview Commands before delivering to router. We'll also look at the commands after the configuration, after the SDM config is done as well. So let's click OK there. And again, we're going to go with a basic firewall here, so let's click on Launch the selected task. Usually get a descriptive window right after we do that, and you can see here that's exactly what we get. It allows us to secure our internet access router fast and easily, uses predefined rules to allow private network users to access the net, and protects your private network from the most common outside attacks. You can see there it's going to apply default access rules to the inside trusted and outside untrusted interfaces. It's going to apply a default inspection rule to the outside interface, and it also is going to enable IP unicast reverse path forwarding on the outside interface. So to continue, as always, we will click Next. And here's where we have to define our outside interfaces and our inside interface. You can see the first drop-down box. Select an outside untrusted interface. And here in our lab, that's going to be 00 fast Ethernet. And you'll notice that when I selected that one, it grayed out here in the inside trusted interfaces list. It is impossible for an interface to be both inside and outside, which means it would be trusted and untrusted, which would be hard. So we're going to go with fast Ethernet 01 here for our trusted interface. Now notice that we have an access or an option here, allow secure SDM access from outside interfaces. Well, I'm not going to check that, and I'm going to click Next. And notice we get a message immediately. It's just warning you, saying you're not going to be able to launch SDM from 00, our untrusted interface, as your configuration stands right now when you're done. So basically it's a warning saying that's one way of getting in that you're not going to be able to use after you're done here. So we're going to click OK to that. And now we end up at the basic firewall security configuration window. One of the windows we saw just a moment ago was talking about pre-configured rules and policies. And you can see this is our basic firewall security configuration. And we can just use this slider to change the policy from high to medium and then to low if we want. Let's look at the descriptions here. I know it's kind of a small window, but there's some important information here. High security is the one that was chosen by default, and you can see the router identifies inbound and outbound instant messaging and peer-to-peer traffic and drops it. The router is also going to check inbound and outbound HTTP traffic and email traffic for protocol compliance and drop it if it's not compliant. Returns traffic for other TCP and UDP applications if the session was initiated inside the firewall. And you'll notice we keep coming back to that concept. We don't want those conversations or sessions started from outside. Choose this option if you want to prevent use of these applications on the network. I'm going to click Preview Commands. Don't panic because you're not going to have to memorize all of these. But these are the commands that would be written to this router if we went with high security. And you can see the default name of the rule or the policy is SDM_high. So that tells you everything you need to know right there. It's the high security policy. And just going through it here, you can see some AOL servers that are being denied there. Here's application IM MSN, MSN Messenger. It's denying a batch of services. There's a couple of web services. Here's a bunch of Yahoo stuff all getting blocked. Application IM Yahoo. So a lot of Yahoo Instant Messenger services being blocked. Nutella, BitTorrent, eDonkey, FastTrack. All kinds of stuff down here being blocked. So finally, and that's a pretty long policy. So we're going to close out on that. So let's say we don't want to get quite that restrictive. Let's take a look at what medium does. Now you'll notice that it does much the same thing. It is identifying inbound and outbound IM and PTP traffic, but it doesn't necessarily say it's dropping it. It also checks inbound and outbound web and email traffic for protocol compliance, and returns TCP and UDP traffic on sessions initiated again inside the firewall. Let's preview the commands here. That's still a pretty long list. Notice the default name SDM medium. Anytime you see SDM, you know that SDM has created it. So if you create it, don't give it a name with SDM in it. And of course, this is our medium security policy. Notice some things in AOL here are being permitted. Same goes for MSN. You're permitting the IM chat instead of necessarily denying all of it. And you can see references again to Nutella and BitTorrent. So then finally we've got low security. The router is not going to identify application-specific traffic. And again, it does return TCP and UDP traffic on sessions initiated inside the firewall. So that's the one thing that all three security policies have in common. And again, as I've mentioned a couple of times, that's a concept that we keep coming back to. So now that you're familiar with it, again, don't try to memorize each policy. It's probably a good idea to know what high will do, that medium will not, and so forth. But we're going to go back now and go ahead and change it to high security. And click OK. Actually, we'll go with low. We'll go with low. We'll change our minds. We'll let people chat. So let's go with low. And here's the configuration summary. And we're applying some access rules. Notice what it says up here to deny spoofing traffic. Apply access rule to the inbound direction to deny traffic sourced from broadcast and local loopback addresses. We talked about that earlier, that we want to watch that spoofing traffic and then the broadcast, and additionally here the local loopback addresses. Now let's look at what is being applied to the outbound interface. And this is all inbound, so we are doing something to inbound traffic here. Let's scroll over and take a look. We are permitting IPsec tunnel traffic if necessary. We're permitting GRE tunnel traffic if necessary. We're permitting ICMP traffic, and we're permitting NTP traffic if necessary. But notice what's being denied here. Deny spoofing traffic, deny traffic sourced from broadcast, local loopback, and private address ranges, and we're denying everything else. So there's a lot going on here, but watch that spoofing traffic and sourced from broadcast traffic, because that is what we really want to stop, and we'll actually see that on the configuration here in a moment.